Hello, I'm Michael Chusid. I'm here to speak to you as part of the GlassCon VE program. I'm speaking today from Los Angeles, California, where it is a very hot day. Our topic today is closers for glass doors, particularly focusing on some new developments, including closer hinges. So sit back, relax, and I hope we learned something together. We're going to discuss several perspectives at trying to understand what a closer is and why they're important. And we're going to begin with a sociological perspective, which perhaps is a little unusual, a little unexpected, but this paper by Jim Johnson is really very provocative in terms of thinking about the role of inanimate objects in our life and the role they play. As we said, walls need holes. Holes need occasionally to be plugged. We can plug a hole by building a masonry wall, but that's not very easy to remove. So we create a slab that is easily removable. But sometimes individuals forget to plug the door. So one of the responses is to delegate that task to a doorman or a porter or slave or a servant. But even that person, as dedicated as they might be, will perform the task imperfectly. They'll be called away to do some other task. They'll want to sleep, and the door might inadvertently be left open. So we assign the task to a non-human device called a door closer, which is great until the door closer itself fails, and that creates some social tension. So I encourage you to note this article. You can find it online with a little bit of searching, and it's worth the effort to read it. But more of you are going to be thinking about door closers in terms of hygiene, for example. COVID was not the type of door closer that we want to think about. But it's important to remember that half the times people touch doors, it's because they're closing the door. Now, this is changing a little bit because you can push the door open with a shoulder. There are lever arms on doorknobs that you can operate with an elbow. But how do you close the door? Well, one of the interesting responses recently has been to have foot devices that you can operate instead of a handle. So instead of a handle, perhaps we should call these footles. Actually, that's a trademark term. And there are other devices that have which you can grip with your forearm. So I guess we could call those graspers, armals. That's the word I was looking for. But that also is trademarked. So we've missed our calling. Electrical operators are costly, but might be justified in critical locations such as entrances where it's important to control heat loss or heat gain. But I predict we'll see increasing use of door closers in response to the pandemic and other social concerns. Another very important reason for using closers is fire safety. We build a wall that is fire resistance rated, but then an open door allows the fire to spread through the opening. So we also have to be concerned that the door and the frame have fire resistance and that the door actually closes. So there are approval procedures, for example, at Underwriters Laboratory, to actually test test closers for fire-resistant doors. This is a picture of a fire in the Bronx, an apartment building. And it reminds me that building codes change in response to tragedies. So a few years ago, a child or someone left open a doorway from one of the apartments. It opened into the open stair area, and a small fire on the stove that would normally have been contained easily within the apartment spread throughout the entire building, and there were many deaths. And presumably it could have been avoided if there had been a door closer. So in fact, the New York City Building Code has been changed so that doors leading to interior stairways or corridors in these types of multi-story residential buildings must have closers. It's a dynamic situation. It's also important to notice that until recently, there'd be no reason to talk about fire safety and door closers in a program about glass doors, because the amount of glass in a fire door was very strictly limited. And when I started in my career, glass in a fire-rated door was limited to 10 inches by 10 inches, and it had to be wired glass. Well, there's been all sorts of improvement in glass and transparent ceramics, and now indeed it's possible to get a fire resistance rated door of up to 2 hours with a glass panel in it. That's an exciting development. Related to the issue of fire resistance is the means of egress. When someone was fleeing that burning apartment, they had to remember to close the door. So the building codes, for example, NFPA 101, Life Safety Code, says that doors in the path of egress that are normally required to be kept closed, such as those to a stair enclosure or horizontal exit, shall be self-closing. So here you see the exit signs indicate that the doors are part of an egress path. They have to be self-closing. Another reason to use closers is to control access and the related issues of security and safety. One of the important places, for example, is swimming pools. You don't want someone wandering through an open door unaware that there's a swimming pool hazard on the other side. This is particularly a risk with young children. Outdoor playgrounds have to have self-closing devices, presumably to keep young children in the playground, fenced playground area until some adult supervisor will let them out. In nursing homes, especially nursing homes for people with memory disorders, you need access control. Now, I want to point out that there's been a lot of concern recently about security in schools with increased incidence of shooters, mass shootings in school. How do you lock down a classroom door quickly? And one way that's been widely proposed is to take a tube of some sort and slide it over the arms of an overhead closer. Oftentimes, used fire hose is repurposed for this. This is a very dangerous practice because it can also result in children being trapped in a room. So there are other means of securing a classroom door besides using this technique. But I want to point out that this technique is one of the concerns I raise about overhead closers, that someone with malicious intent can come into a room, disable the closer by sliding either a sleeve, a fire hose, or a piece of wire over those parallel arms, and either trap someone in a room or prevent someone else on the outside of the door to come to the aid. So please think about door security from both sides of the door. Another important use of closers is for energy savings and thermal comfort. Now, on the left, you see a vestibule with obviously a cold condition on the outside of the building, and sure enough, you see door closers in addition to the vestibule to try to make sure that tempered air inside doesn't escape. But we also have concerns inside buildings wherever we have a difference in temperature. So, for example, on the right, we see a walk-in cooler building with an automatic closer on the door so that someone can maintain heat in the building and maintain the difference of heat from one area to the other. Techniques like these are important to any of the green building programs where the concern is about reducing the amount of energy needed to operate a building. Closers are also important for environmental control, for noise, odor, dust, insects, and vermin. The person in this picture is pointing out that where these two doors meet is a gap, and a very small gap provides a superhighway for a rodent, lizard, or other creature, other varmint, to get through the door. So we have to make sure that the doors are also appropriately weathered, sealed, and have good closures. Many of these types of nuisances, like insects and odors, are also regulated by health departments. Dust is important in any place where they're doing sensitive manufacturing or where there's airborne dust. Sensitive computer equipment needs to be protected by dust. Dust is a housekeeping issue. And noise is also a sustainability issue. We're all probably aware of the requirements on door operation imposed by the Americans with Disability Acts and the other similar acts that regulate accessibility for those who are differently abled. It regulates the amount of pressure required to open a door, and it regulates especially the speed at which the door closes, because a rapidly closing door can knock someone off balance or cause other damage, and we're going to see a scenario for that in just a moment. But keep in mind that we are all less abled at some point in our life. This gentleman, for example, with one hand on a suitcase and another hand carrying a child, may be able to push a door open, but it would sure be inconvenient to have to turn around then and pull the door shut. Well, thank you for bearing with me. I hope this has broadened your understanding of door closers, and thank you for your attendance. A door closer is not as simple a thing as you might think, and I really urge you to get a consultation with a qualified door consultant or to contact a door closer manufacturer to make sure you're picking an appropriate product and you see the wide range of considerations that may come into effect.